Hey guys, welcome back. We have a really cool story to share. We had a family come in visiting South Florida. They fell in love with this Tree of Life tank and they wanted us to replicate it in their home upstate. So we actually, after a lot of months of planning, sent them the tank, sent them all the goods, the wood, the rock, everything necessary on pallets to their home. We flew up there with the plants and we did an amazing aquascape. Stick around so you can learn a lot of tips and tricks on how to do this at home. Thanks for watching. All right, so the audio got a little bit messed up, so we're doing a voiceover here. I'm at the hotel room. We're reviewing our mock-up that we did at the store. There we're holding all the pieces together to give us an idea, a blueprint for setting this aquascape together. All right, here we're unboxing our pallet. One of the challenges was to protect the manzanita wood on the top because it's very fragile. When packaging things up, you have to almost work with the dry goods to build a skeleton so you can put your wood around it and keep it very tight from shifting and breaking. For the wood, we use two types of wood. Manzanita wood from California for the branches, and for the trunk and underwater parts, we use North Carolina cedar. North Carolina cedar is great. It's been underwater for decades, so most of the tannins have been pulled out by nature. In addition, we have to package all the rock, the wood, the wet dry, filtration, tubing, hoses, and everything we thought we could possibly need for this scape, since we were going to be thousands of miles away from the store. So the tank was already delivered to the customer's house and they brought it inside. We pulled it away from the wall so we could have access to the underside of the cabinet. We're going to split the work. I'm going to start working on the plumbing and Nathan's going to start working on the lighting so we could see what we're doing. All right, so here we're going to set up the Pro Clear Aquatics wet dry. We decided to go with the wet dry for better filtration, for fresh water, and I'm going to show you quickly how to set these up. So know one thing, that you should leave the rubber gasket should always go on the outside of the tank. So you put the male piece in and the rubber gasket goes on the outside, and then the elbow gets screwed in and it goes on tight. To keep this watertight, you need to make sure that you don't over tighten it, because over tightening it actually will cause it to leak. Now, we like using silicone lubricant. Silicone lubricant does not dry out and it is 100% food grade safe and fish safe. So we always use these on seals, gaskets, bulkheads, you name it. We like putting it on. It really helps create a nice watertight seal. At this point, start tightening it up from inside and then give it a quarter turn until it's really nice and snug. But don't over tighten because you could cause a little bit of drops of water. At the same time, you're going to have to adjust the angles to match the drain pipes. I also like putting a little bit of silicone lubricant on the male parts there, so when you slide on the gray hose, it'll work really well. When inserting these, do not glue them in, as you will have to clean them regularly. This is the heritage model of Planet Aquariums, made out of solid oak, and it beautifully matches the customer's interior. The doors are fully removable, which we did for the installation of this tank. When setting up your aquarium equipment and electrical equipment down below, there's a couple things to keep in mind. Make sure you find where you want to mount your controllers, your equipment, mount your power strips high up, so that way you create drip loops with the cables and you avoid shorts. For this build, we used a Reef Octopus DC pump. We liked it. It does not require Wi-Fi, but it gives a good controller to create feed mode, easy to turn on and off without requiring unplugging and replugging the pump. For heating, we use a titanium heater with a controller, which makes it very easy for the customers to maintain their temperature with a nice digital readout. We mounted both of these items on the dry side of the wet dry. As this design, there is no splashing going on that side, and it should minimize condensation and water. Make sure that you mount your power bricks above the stand, and grab masking tape and quickly start labeling everything so you know which plug belongs to what. Down the road, you can always use a Dymo label maker and create professional labels. While I was working on the plumbing, Nathan has been working on the lighting. We chose Kessel A360 XE's Tuna Suns for their flexibility. Has the ability for us to control each light individually using the Wi-Fi adapter, and it allows us to change the angle of the heads, raise and lower, and allow us to change how much par we can get out of each light individually that a bar light would not give us. In addition, these are the same lights as we used in our build back at the store, and the customers really fell in love with that natural Amazonian light and the shimmer. It will make their fish look completely amazing. For this project, we ended up bringing in the multi-angle bracket adapters, the 55-degree lenses, the extension bars, and the extension slide bars. One thing we did not count on was that the stock 10-foot K-Link cable was not long enough, and we had to end up ordering a longer run of cable once we ended up moving the lights. But normally would not be an issue if you're not using the extender bars like we did. You'll notice that we laid egg crate at the bottom. We like using egg crate on the bottom of our tanks. It's not really to protect the glass, but it's actually to keep things from slipping. We use egg crate in both marine and freshwater tanks, and you'll notice that the wood doesn't slip around as easily as it would if it was on the glass. You really should never use substrate, sand, or soil to hold your pieces of wood. You should really rely on a mechanical connection to the glass to keep stuff from slipping. Here we're doing the dry fit on how we're going to put everything. We haven't really quite secured, but we're trying to get the fit of the branches to make sure that this is what we want and how centered and not centered. A couple other things that we did do, we use some larger rocks, and we use our method of using rock wool and CA glue to attach the rock to the wood to give it proper support. One thing off camera that wasn't captured, this bottom piece of wood had a long root that was sticking out towards the back of the tank, and we ended up cutting it to make it fit and to give us enough room for cleaning and for adjustment. We secured the top part of the tree using CA glue and rock wool, and then we secured the branches using screws. If you're going to use screws underwater, make sure that they're stainless steel for marine grade, so that way they do not rust and release heavy metals. When working with your rockscape, if you're going to use substrate to plant like we are, you have to kind of start working on your retaining wall to hold back the substrate by working with your larger stones down first. And you kind of have to go back and forth, first work with the rock work, then add some of the substrate, then add more rock work, add more substrate. It kind of goes in a couple of runs. But you cannot do it all in one shot and expect it for it to work perfectly, because you kind of have to cement in the rocks based on the substrate that you're working with and based on the elevation that you're going for. Here we're trying to go for a 4 to 5 inch high elevation in the back and very shallow, about 1/2 inch in the front. By now we've accomplished a nice deep bed to plant in. At the bottom we used APT Feast and Contrasoil at the top. We're using sand and the small pebbles to fill in the cracks and to kind of cement in the rock from moving around. Once water goes in, starts pushing in all the pieces, it actually will cement it in very nicely, but try to get in your small pieces and large pieces in. We're currently doing a dry run of our lighting. We had to rerun longer cables, so we're able to move the lights so that we can get the lighting. We don't want the lights blasting the plants that are going to be attached to the wood. All right, now we're doing our prep work for our plants. We like removing the rock wool from the plants before that. It's always good having a clean bucket of water so you can properly clean them out. When using terrestrial plants, get rid of all the soil out of the plants. Now we're kind of laying out. We're using larger swords in the back, medium-sized swords, and cryptocorenes in the front, followed by 2 groupings of stem plants, Bacopa Carolina and Ludwigia Red, in there right where it's getting a nice amount of par. We had done a preliminary par test, and we can get in that section anywhere from 70 to 100 par very easily. Towards the back, in a little bit more shaded area, we're going to concentrate on putting Vallisneria and cryptocorenes in the shaded areas, so that way they'll fill in very nicely. We ended up moving one of the lights further to the left and angled the swivel head so it gave a nice beam of light, but very filtered, to that section, so it should grow nicely over time. When working with plants, it is important that you keep them wet. So have a spray bottle handy and continuously spray them to keep them from drying out. Also in the front, we put 2 red tiger lotuses that we're going to advise the customer to keep them trimmed so that way they stay nice and bushy. One of the issues we had in joining the 2 pieces of wood is that there was that gap, and Nathan came out with a great idea of using Java fern to fill it in and to kind of create like a ring around it, and I think it came out really good. It looks very nice and natural, and you can't tell the difference between the 2 pieces of wood, especially once it starts growing out. When working with epiphytes, make sure that you start gluing the rhizome and you find either nooks and crannies or you glue from behind, so that way you minimize the visibility of glue. On this side here, with some of the larger epiphytes, we actually glued smaller anubias on top of the roots where it was exposed. Now we started working on the waterfall effect to keep the terrestrial plants wet, and it took a couple tries until we found the right amount of water pressure going to each one. I will have to say we had to create a drip loop, as you can see there. Always have the hoses dipping into your water, so any water dripping down goes back into the tank and not onto the floor. This was a test, us filling the sump with water and having the return pump fill the tank slowly. It kind of worked out really nice, and it gave us an idea where the water was flowing on the rock so we could put additional plants. It is important when setting up these plants that the lights are not burning them. We had to adjust the right light down to almost 20% to keep the par down for the anubias and for the terrestrial plants. We only had 1 or 2 plants really float. That wasn't really an issue. We also added a Sencha doser for the dosing of the tank. Here we added a UNS atomizer that goes on a 15-minute on, 15-minute off cycle to keep the plants moist and to give that really dramatic effect. The tank is filled. We added beneficial bacteria. We adjusted the PAR, and the APT feast will be releasing the ammonia to cycle the tank.
Hey Nathan, so that was a rough 2 days, right?
It was rough, but it was worth it.
I know. We're super happy the way it came out. Great job, Nathan. Guys, thank you so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel and supporting us.
We look forward to seeing you on the next video.